But let's start with the aftermath of the federal election. And the Labor Party is now well cemented as the government in not just this term, but most likely for at least another after that. So the obvious question is what went wrong for the Liberal Nationals coalition and how will they try to reconnect with Australians? But in that assessment, there's also a danger that the coalition could rip itself apart in a way that would make the Conservative side of politics unelectable for decades to come. The Teals represent a part of that fragmentation. But if the Nats and the Liberals were ever to drift apart seriously, it would make things ever so much more difficult. There's also a risk for business, with the business community actively lobbying against what it sees as anti-business policies of the Labor government, not the least of which is the policy to tax unrealised capital gains in large superannuation funds. But there's so much more. Industrial relations is one, energy policy is another. Yet arguments that Labor has presided over record low productivity growth and declining living standards amounted to nothing at the polls. So can the opposition now mount an effective argument in its diminished state? Joining me now, the leader of the Nationals, David Littleproud, from his home in Ryford in Queensland. David, many thanks for your time today. I just want to ask you first up, simply, is the coalition alive and well? And will it vote as a block on every piece of legislation that comes before our 48th Parliament?
Yeah, and obviously Susan Lay and I are working through those issues around the coalition agreement, making sure that it is a tight agreement. And that's been complicated, obviously, by the personal circumstances of Susan and the tragic loss of her mother yesterday. So we're respecting that. We're taking our time to get it right, respecting the values and principles of the Liberal Party, but also the National Party. But there's serious lessons to be learnt from this election. It was a significant defeat, and you have to learn from that. You can't turn your back on that. You have to be humble in what the Australian people have said to us. The National Party, I'm very proud of the fact that we're able to return all our members of Parliament, and we nearly pulled off a miracle in Bendigo with a 10% swing. We're about 1.5% short when the rest of the country swung against us hard. So what we'll do is work through this methodically to make sure that we can put a cogent argument to the Australian people, and the fundamentals haven't changed around what's going wrong in this country. The ideology, in fact, is only going to accelerate from the Albanese government. Energy is the economy, and an all-renewables approach cannot work, and that's before you get to other factors that and policies that this government's pushing through, whether it be IR, whether it be the superannuation changes, are fundamentally going to change our economy and they're going to hurt Australians. So I wouldn't characterise it that we're 2 terms away. I think what we saw in this election, if the mob decides to turn, they'll turn in a significant way, and anything can happen, I think, in Australian politics. That's what this election's shown us.
So, given the Nationals' performance versus the Liberals' performance at the polls, do the Nationals now deserve more senior ministries in the new coalition?
Oh, look, ministries is always determined by arithmetic, and you've got to respect that. And what we work through is what is the best team, what are the best policies and the values and principles of both parties. We'll do that carefully, and when Susan has some air and some time for her family, we'll continue on that. And obviously it has been a little bit of a complicated week for us in terms of that, but it's important that Susan was with her family first and foremost. So I went to Albury to make sure that she understood that she had that time, she had that respect, and we were going to work through this methodically. And that's what we'll do when she's ready again. But at the moment, it's just about her family, and I think we've got 3 years, and I think it's important we get the oxygen there to be able to do it in the most appropriate way.
I understand that. But the one thing is I do understand is that the Labor Party will do its very best to exploit differences between the Liberals and Nationals. So what I'm wondering is whether there's policy that could see the Liberals wanting to back Labor where the Nationals do not, where there's effectively a wedge on the parties.
Oh, look, Labor have done that and will continue to do that. And what we want to do is make sure as a coalition we can work through pragmatic solutions to make sure we're solving the nation's problems. And energy is the economy. And unfortunately, none of the fundamentals are going to shift because Anthony Albanese won the election. That doesn't change the fundamental problem of going an all-renewables approach. You cannot have a country of the industrial scale the size of Australia with an all-renewables approach. Just have a look at what's happening in Spain at the moment. So what we need to do is work through together to make sure we draw on all our resources in this country to make sure we fix the fundamentals of our energy. You get energy right, then you can start to make sure that you provide those fundamentals for business and look at other factors around industrial relations and other matters that will drive productivity, drive growth in this country, because any government that says they created jobs is lying to you. The only people that create jobs is business. The only jobs government create, you pay for. And so what we need to do is make sure we let those that are creating the real jobs unlock their potential to continue to grow this country, and we'll do that in a calm and methodical way.
Yeah, OK, but your own Senate leader, Bridget McKenzie, this week raised questions about whether there will be agreement about, say, for example, a net zero by 2050 policy.
Well, these are the issues that we continue to work through, and you've got to respect the sovereignty of each individual party, the values and principles of those parties, in making sure that you can have a cogent agreement. But I think what you've also got to understand is, I think what the political commentariat has always gone is that we should be the same in terms of our thinking. It's actually a healthy thing for our democracy if there is difference of opinions on certain policy. But we agree with far more than what we disagree with the Liberal Party, and that's why we've been in coalition for so long. But diversity of ideas, diversity of backgrounds in our party room gave us the strength to get through this election. And it's about the respect that we bring to the table with the Liberals to make sure that we get the best policy settings. But having diversity in that room and diversity of values and ideas is not a bad thing. That's actually a healthy thing for our democracy. And I think the commentariat need to think differently about what's good for our democracy. In the Labor Party, if you have a differing point of view, you get kicked out. That's not healthy for our democracy. What is healthy is that we have robust debate, robust ideas, and we're all advancing to make our country better than what it is today.
OK, so David, as the Liberal Party tries to rediscover its roots, but some policies that the coalition took to the election, like threatening to bust up supermarkets or big insurance companies, to me at least anyway, they look like very anti-Liberal policies. They almost look like national policies more than anything else. I wonder whether policies such as that will exist in this new coalition.
Well, those are the things we work through. But let me just say the divestiture policy that we brought into place for the big supermarkets, and that's the extent of which it was. I think it's important for the big business to understand we already have divestiture powers in this country. They were brought into place in 2019 in the energy sector. In fact, Anthony Albanese supported those. What these are is basically a deterrent, a consequence if they do the wrong thing by their suppliers and by you, the consumer. If they're doing nothing wrong, they have nothing to fear. And as legislators, what our responsibility is to do is to make sure there is a deterrent, there is a consequence if you do the wrong thing. And previously, and what this government is putting in place is a business as usual approach. An infringement notice of $198,000 for a supermarket who does the wrong thing. They'll pull that out of a till out of one of their Sydney or Melbourne stores as a cost of doing business. You have to change culture to make sure that the culture within an organisation respects the market. Government shouldn't interfere in marketplaces unless there's an imbalance, and you should only do that with a deterrent and a consequence where you can. And that was the policy we took forward, and I think the supermarkets are not going to cost them anything. It's all within the existing regulatory guide rails that they have. It's just the penalty is about making sure they change their consequence, that there's a consequence. And we were talking about $2 million infringement notices, not less than 200,000, to make sure that you didn't have to get to divestiture powers. You changed the culture. So we'll talk through all these, but competition policy is important. So too is industrial relations, but energy is the economy. And unless we get that right, you can talk about everything else until you're blue in the face. Yes. But energy is the economy, and if we don't fix that, then we're going to have a poorer nation.
Just a final one for you. Are the differences between the Nationals and Liberals compounded by the defection of Jacinta Nampijinpa-Price to the Liberals? Does that affect things?
No, look, we're disappointed in Jacinta. We obviously supported her before any other political party would in opposing the Voice. I actually secured an extra shadow cabinet position so Jacinta could sit in our shadow cabinet with Peter Dutton. But her ambition exceeds what the National Party can provide. She can never be Prime Minister if she sits in the National Party room. I don't want to withhold someone or constrain someone's ambition. And if Jacinta wants to do that and she can play a constructive role in the Liberal Party, they need it, and they need it badly, then while we're disappointment. My job is to get over my own ego, to get over my disappointments and look about and focus on who's the most important thing in this, and that's the Australian people.
Indeed.
That's what they expected from us and their political leaders, is to focus on them, not us.
Thank you so much. I'll tell you what, David Littleproud, always great to chat to you. We'll no doubt do it again during this term of Parliament very shortly. Thanks for your time today.
Thanks for having me.